call this meeting of the Bloomington School Board to order. It is Monday, June 10th. Director Corman is out of town and will not be attending tonight, but the rest of us are all here. So please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and thank you for your indulging us in our technical difficulties. Would someone like to move approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. All in favor of the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. That brings us to recognition of students, staff, and public, and we're going to recognize BEC TV, National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences Students Productions Awards. And I believe I'd like to introduce Tom Ringdahl to the podium and his crew.
And crew.
You guys can come right over this way. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the school board, Superintendent Fujitaki. It's our honor to be here this evening to be acknowledged for our receiving two student production awards from the Upper Midwest Emmy organization. The award ceremony was for covered the 5-state area, and so we're really pleased that that the Emmy organization recognized that this work that these students and the rest of the BEC crew does is some of the finest in the country, and we are honored to serve our community and serve the Bloomington schools in the way that we do. I want to apologize for anybody who knows we had a late start tonight. Totally our fault, except for the fact that if you walk into our office right now, you literally have to wear a hard hat to get in there. The difference between Friday and this morning is that they kind of ripped everything apart, and we've already lost most of our network connectivity and our phones and a few other things. We'll work on those things, but that's why we're running a little late tonight. My apologies for that, and we're having a little problem with our presentation here as well. So if it's ready, we're going to roll you a quick 3-minute video. A little bit of background on this. So one of the awards that we won for was for the state baseball tournament held at Target Field, the home of the Twins, and that's an event where we serve on behalf of, we represent Bloomington out there, but we work with the State High School League with Channel 45 to produce all of the entire tournament that goes out, and have been doing this for the past 10 years, that goes out to the entire community and the entire world. We have viewership from across the world on this tournament, and is one of a couple different things that we do in league with the high school league to really help them serve the constituents and serve students and families all across the world. It's really rewarding that we see people who are watching, not just in Bloomington, but also in outstate Minnesota, people who are watching often in other parts of the world where we have brothers and sisters who are participants, and moms and dads who are in the armed services and things like that. And a great way to serve them as well. So this 3-minute thing we're going to see here is kind of a recap of our students after they did that, and they're thinking about that experience. So we have that ready to roll? No, we don't. Well, let's take a look at it together and see if we can find it. Let's do this as we try and find that. Is it still being updated?
It's done. It's just we need to launch the application now.
All right. So
Tom, you
yeah.
want us to go to Part A and do that and
Yeah, we
come
could.
back?
We could. Deb, if Deb's relaunching, I can have the students introduce themselves and talk a little bit if we want to start there. Should we do that? All right. So we have a smattering of our students who work together with BEC TV here. So they'll have a chance to introduce themselves with their name and their school, the grade they just finished up with. BEC TV works with students from 7th grade up through high school and into college as well. We have one student here who is extraordinary. They started in 6th grade, so that's unusual. And we have some people who are graduated this last spring, because this was last year's production that we got awarded for. And we have some recent grads from just now. And it looks like our video might actually be there. So there it is, yeah, so perfect. So we'll just see if we can restart that, and we'll roll the video, and we'll be good to go.
You can't be colorblind working for you, can you?
Sure.
No, it's
We
color-
had one student who was totally blind.
Really? How they do the wiring?
Do this.
Not many kids can say, hey, guess what I did? I didn't go to school today, but I went down to the U.S. Bank Stadium or the Metrodome or Target Field, U.S. Bank Stadium.
To be able to teach you and then be able to teach the new people who were me, basically, at one point in time. It makes BEC like a really good organization.
I'm really proud of the students that we get to work with here. And it should be pointed out that most other places that work the way that BEC does, we operate off of cable TV franchise fees. That means that there's no school district money, no tax money that goes into what we do. It's all through grants. And we've been doing this for about 40 years or so, serving the community in this way. And many other places take those finances and they have nothing but paid professionals who do the programming, and they can only do a fraction of what we do. Here at BEC TV, we work with all of our staff, our former students, former volunteers, many of whom are in the business now, and then are able to mentor our new crop of people and bring in best practices and show us the best way that things are happening in the industry right now. And because of that, it's just kind of a win-win-win that we're able to make more great programming. We're able to we're able to maximize our dollars, and we're able to give an opportunity to great students who then, many of them get launched into the business or something affiliated as well. So I'd like to have give a chance to the students to introduce themselves, and a few of them will also talk about their experience with BEC and why it means something to them. You can cover. You should cover the microphone.
I'm Parker Ayala. I'm from Jefferson High School, and I'm in 10th grade.
I'm Max Manwarn. I am in 11th grade in Jefferson High School.
I'm Lucas Craig in at Oak Grove Middle School, and I'm in 6th grade.
My name's Andrew Grund. I am in 11th grade at Kennedy High School.
I'm Zach Vasura, and I just finished 10th grade at an online school.
My name's Nick Lee, and I just graduated from Jefferson Senior High School. And at BEC TV, you learn a lot of skills. For example, you get to use professional video equipment, and you're able to learn real-life skills like leadership and other things during your time at BEC TV.
I'm Evan Foss. I went to Jefferson High School, and I just finished my first year at St. Olaf College in Northfield. And one thing that makes BEC TV really interesting is that you get all of the different, middle schools and high schools combined and working hard together. And one of the really cool things about some of these big target field US Bank Stadium shoots that we get to do is that it's like Bloomington, just Bloomington's little thing with middle school and high school students who were working these huge high school final, things. It was really cool to see the whole team come together and work out on these.
I'm Ben Canavo. I just graduated from Jefferson High School. What I really like about BEC is the environment. It's a very family-like environment. Especially at like the bigger shoots like US Bank or Target Field, we come together, we work at the thing, or we don't just work the event, we grow together, we learn together.
I'm Alex Redding. I'll be going to Hennepin Technical College in the fall, and never thought I would be up here doing this, but BEC has provided so many opportunities for me and other techs, and I know, as Tom has said before, that there are plenty of BEC alum that are in the industry right now, and the opportunities that BEC has allowed me to be a part of over the years has been tremendous, and being behind the camera, even in front of the camera, doing some of the sports broadcasts has been pretty cool, and even me and Nick were also able to get connected to one of the technical producers at Fox Sports through covering one of the US Bank semifinal games at US Bank Stadium, which was super, super awesome. And yeah, it is an experience unlike any other, and I'm just so happy to be a part of a fantastic organization that gives people these kinds of opportunities, and that allows people to get a little bit of a headway into a really awesome career and that sort of thing. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Nora Malik, and I just graduated from Purpose Center for Arts Education in Golden Valley, but I did go to Jefferson High School previously. BEC has inspired me in so many different ways, but one of the major things is I never thought I would be going to college for broadcast, but I'll be going to SCSU in the fall, St. Cloud State, so that I'm able to pursue this path that BEC has led me on. I've been doing this since 7th grade, and it's really inspired me. Because of BEC, I've been able to get a shadowing position at TPT and other networks, and it's an amazing, amazing organization and amazing experience that allows us to shape our futures.
So again, we thank you for the honor and privilege of being here this evening. Tell a little bit of our story. If you have any questions, you're welcome. Otherwise, we're good.
Tom, as we BEC, Bloomington Educational Cable TV, you all do a lot of community events, other schools, other concerts, choirs, and different things like that throughout the community, right?
We're based. Our bread and butter is doing things in and through the Bloomington Public Schools. That's where most of our things are. Where there are opportunities, we also try and find other places to fit in the community as well to serve. So like the Heritage Days Parade and things like that, we're also working with.
Anyone else? Well, thank you so much, and we're very proud of you all for getting the 2 Emmys, so congratulations.
Thank you. You know, I've said many times before that my greatest skill in life is surrounding myself with amazing people. And so just a quick shout out to the rest of the BECTV staff and to all these students who are here and the ones who could not be here today for the great work that they do to represent our community.
All right, that brings us to part A of, I think I should ask if there's anyone in the audience that would be interested in addressing the board on a topic that's not on the agenda this evening? Seeing no one come forward, we'll move on to part A. Someone like to move part A?
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. Part A is our board business, our contracts, and our finances. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Thank you. Part B brings us to number 1, Research Practice Partnership Agreement with the University of Minnesota, Computer Sciences.
Madam Chair.
Please.
Slides are wrong. Be it resolved, the School Board of Independent School District 271 approves the Research Practice Partnership Agreement with the University of Minnesota for the development of computer science education program.
Second?
Thank you. And John Weiser is here, our Executive Director of Technology and Information Services, to speak to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Bartolotta, Superintendent Fujitaki, board members. I'm here tonight with Lana Peterson to talk about computer science. And I, for one, am very excited about tonight's collaboration that we want to bring to you. I'm going to have 2 purposes. We're going to have 2 purposes here tonight. One is to our annual update to the board on the status of Next Technologies for Learning, NTL. We come about this time each year. Instead of that laundry list of all of the things we've done over the year, we're going to highlight just this singular look forward at next year, which is opening a computer science program, starting a computer science program for our kids. There is, as the chair, you've noted, there is an agreement, a research practice partnership agreement that we're also seeking board approval on. So to give you a little grounding, Next Technologies for Learning started with the 2013 Safe and Innovative Schools referendum. In the 5 years since our community passed that referendum, we've laid the foundation of computer access, our one-to-one program with Chromebooks and tablets for our kids, with access to information via the internet, guaranteed access inside of our schools, and then also at home for kids to get information that they need to progress along their academic pathway. And then on top of that foundation, we've built some educational programs. So we've been before you to talk about flex spaces, how our environments have changed in those as our programs have evolved technologically. And last year, if you recall, we talked about online learning, the growth of our online learning program here in Bloomington. The next brick on top of that strong foundation is computer science for our students. So the first question always is why or how does computer science fit with our vision of pathways to career and college readiness? As we dug into that question, a number of reasons emerged that I want to highlight. Statements like this: creating technologies can give confidence in dealing with complex, open-ended problems, persistence in the face of challenges, and promotes the skills like creativity, collaboration, and communication. We're talking about higher level skills for our students that are enabled by technology, that aren't just unique to technology, they're unique to all sorts of problem solving. In terms that the board commonly uses, we're trying to help kids thrive in this rapidly changing world. Some of the other reasons that have surfaced is we pay attention to our economic conditions, things that are happening in our community and around the world. As we've seen these STEM fields explode economically and the opportunities for kids as they grow into adults, we've noticed this. There is a significant participation gap, and Lana will talk a little bit about that, especially for students of color and for women in these STEM fields. And so our stakeholders said this was an important thing to level this playing field for our kids as we launch them into economic viability. And then one of the third reasons that came up prominently was what we all aspire to do, which is ask kids, what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to be when you grow up? And then wrap the systems of our organization around trying to help students achieve that goal, to be successful in what they want to do. If that sounds familiar to you, it's the core of the PGP. We have a lot of kids who are interested in technology, who want to go into these fields, who could really benefit by these skills, and so we're providing that type of programming for them. So I'm going to pause a moment to just give a broader definition of what is computer science, because computer science isn't just coding, even though that's what people most prominently think of. I'm going to go back again to say computer science is primarily about problem solving complex problems, using a collaborative process. So as you see some of these presentations over the next year or two, especially if you come to some of our schools, you're going to hear processes like computational thinking or design thinking. You'll hear us talk a lot about collaboration and creativity, because we know no complex problems in this world are solved by yourself. They're always solved with a team, and there's almost always more than one creative way to solve a problem. And so we think that this is a vehicle to work on those higher level skills. And then, yes, it is about coding. Kids will be coding. At the younger grades, there's visual coding, block coding, with programs like Scratch, you may have heard of. And then at older grades, we get into programs like Python or Java, which have some practical work applications. So how are we going to do this monumental task? Well, we know that we're a research-based organization. We want to do things that are good for our students, but we want that to be founded in research. We know this is a heavy lift. My team has great capacity, but we can always do better, and we can always do better through partnership. And lo and behold, we have one of the strongest partners in the United States in our own backyard in the University of Minnesota. And so with that, I'll hand it off to Lana Peterson, and let me give you the introduction, because I love this mouthful of an introduction. Lana is the Professional Development and Community Engagement Coordinator at the Learning Technology Media Lab at the University of Minnesota.
Thank you. And really that just means that I have the privilege of going into schools and working boots on the ground with teachers and administrators and coaches in the community, both around the state as well as nationally too. So that's the kind of definition of that job. But so LT stands for Learning Technologies, which is a really large field. It incorporates everything that Bloomington Public Schools been doing thus far with integrating tools to enhance learning, but we also look at online learning. We look at building those tools and platforms for learning as well, instructional design, and computer science education. And since our field is so big, the university felt like we needed to have our own research lab because we had so many activities going on. And so just to kind of ground where we are in the College of Education and Human Development in the Curriculum and Instruction Department. So we are not from a computing college. We don't do computers for computer's sake. We approach everything with a pedagogical and instructional approach. We're really focused on social justice and equity. And so that's the lens in which we approach all of our work at the LT Media Lab. The pictures that you see are from trainings that we've done with educators and with students, both in organizations and K-12 settings around the state related to computer science. We're very hands-on. We love to use the tools that we have. We like to model the pedagogical practices that we hope to see in the classroom. And then for some of the organizations we partner with, we're primarily research. So the bottom picture is actually from our Girls Code research project that we did with Twin Cities Public Television, where we studied middle school girls and how to engage middle school girls in computer science at 16 different sites around the country. So our work that we do related to computer science and tech integration is very vast. And one of the areas in which we work in is called Computer Science for All. It's a group that we started this fall with the National Center for Computer Science Education, which is out of St. Scholastica. And basically, these groups are popping up in every state, and we're trying to figure out what's happening in computer science education at the state level and where do we need to go. And so the first thing that we did is we tried to gather whatever data there was on what's happening in computer science in Minnesota, and kind of show that out, and there's a small link there. That's to the larger brief. We saw a lot of staggering things, which is pretty normal for computer science, but the top one that you see is, it's hard to find data, but the computer science AP exams share their data, and as you can see, almost 75% of those who participated in computer science were white, and most of those were males. And so there's a huge disparity in who's engaged in computer science. We also found out that there was less than 1,000 computer science computer science graduates from our universities around the state, and there was 3,500 open jobs around the state of Minnesota. So, and these are good paying jobs. And so by blocking students from even engaging in this science in their education, we're also blocking them from not engaging in these high-paying careers once they leave. So when I say that we approach this from an equity standpoint, what does that mean exactly? There's a lot of research that we bring into a partnership, starting with the fact that you need to start early with computer science ed. Students generally, their perception related to STEM and their interest related to STEM is solidified before they even enter high school. So if you're offering a computer science class in high school, but they don't know what computer science is, and they've never had an opportunity to engage in computer science, they're most likely not going to take that class, which would prepare them for opportunities to enter the job force. So that's one of the reasons we start early. Another one is preparing teachers through professional development to know some research-based pedagogical practices, such as girls and students of color are more engaged in computer science ed if it's project-based, if it's collaborative, and if they get to work on a project that really helps the real world. Just as we saw those kids today, they know that the videos that they're creating help the community, and that's engaging for them. So the larger goal of this partnership is to really help Bloomington Public Schools build that pathway using those research-based strategies that we are engaged in our research-based community at the U, as well as bringing Bloomington Public Schools into a larger network of partners that we have. Research practice partnership is a very specific model that ensures that the university is working very closely with a K-12 partner, that we're focused on problems of practice. So it's not just the university coming in, taking the data that they want, piecing out, that they are really working alongside the K-12 partner and figuring out what do you need to know about computer science education for Bloomington Public Schools, and how can we actively collect data and then feed you that data so that you're constantly making research-based decisions. Yeah.
So let me just close by saying that we know we want this program to be successful, and we're committed to its long-term success. And so we're surfacing some values that guide our planning as we work with groups that include these things: that all students can benefit, that we must be respectful of people's time and recognize that this is new work we're doing, and it has to replace other work that is being done. It's not one more thing on top of everything else. That we're data-driven, and we'll be looking at what's successful based on what we're measuring. That we're going to be continuously responsive to our community needs, and ultimately that's how we retain students. It's how we draw in new students, and from all of our prior conversations about enrollment, how important this is to all of us, staying viable as an organization. And then growing partners. And so one of the things I especially love about working with Lana is the University of Minnesota is a great partner, but as you heard her say, she brings with her the university's other partnerships, and so we get to touch all corners of the state. So we're pretty excited, and this is sort of the value system that is guiding us as we continue to develop. So with that, we'll take some of your questions.
Yes, well, first of all, thanks for coming, Ms. Pearson, John. I think you rubbed up against the question I'm asking in the data that you showed, but I'm curious to know, what are we hearing from our business community? What are they looking for? And is there a possibility that some of the programming can be, can maybe at least loosely address some of the needs in the business community?
Yeah, in 2013, when we started Next Technologies for Learning, I don't know if you recall, but there was a pretty large stakeholder gathering process, which had a lot of open forums listening to the community. And a lot of what we heard and based NTL on was those life skills that weren't really about technology, but technology was a great vehicle. I think this is kind of tops that off, which is we talk about problem solving, we talk about collaboration, and we really just digging in and being persistent in your work. If we can do that for students, doesn't matter if we do that through technology or we do it through some other vehicle, I think it'll be a good lifelong skill.
Anyone else? Director Beaver.
I was at a meeting with some teachers from Poplar Bridge, and they were expressing concern with this coding project coming into their school and how much more it's going to demand of them with professional development and their time. And I'm wondering, do they have realistic fears, or are there ways that they're going to be receiving support to handle what they already have, which is enough, is what they're saying, and now something new?
Yeah, so Poplar Bridge is one of our 2 immersion targets for the fall. I would say we've done a good job. My team has done an excellent job at partnering with Poplar Bridge because we're alongside them. This isn't something we're doing to Poplar Bridge. We're doing something with Poplar Bridge. Our focus will be at the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, where we've talked to teachers. We've been at several staff meetings. We've engaged with Roberto, Principal Roberto's help. We've engaged their teaching staff to figure out what comes off the plate when this new thing comes on the plate. And really, it's all about integration. So working with the learning and teaching team about standards, that you can't do math in a silo and reading in a silo and computer science in a silo, but you have to find a way to teach math skills via computer science so that those things are combined. It's a work in progress. I recognize that. And so we hear that from teachers, and we're committed to making sure that it's not, that people aren't here working till 6 o'clock at night to do just one more thing on top of everything else.
And if I could just add, I work with a lot of districts, and I've been incredibly impressed, honestly, with John's team. I think because they all are teachers and have a background in teaching, they're very realistic about what this looks like and what rollout looks like as well too. And so I just want to say that their plan is very thoughtful, and I think it's very realistic, and it's forward thinking over time. So being realistic about what change looks like.
Another thing that I picked up when you first spoke was that this was about social justice and equity. I caught the equity part. I'm not sure I understand social justice.
Yeah. So we use, as I look around, technology every single day, all the time. And what happens is currently most of our apps and our technologies that we are using are only made by a small population of people. And so the apps that you use are not actually representative and don't necessarily serve all people because they're not made by all people. And so to me, that's a strong social justice issue, as well as research shows that there are societal and systemic hurdles to women and people of color engaging in computer science and computing careers. And to me, that's a larger systemic social justice issue of why is it that you have to be tracking to be in AP courses to engage in computer science courses generally? How come we're not engaging students who are ESL or wouldn't necessarily be highly academically successful, but could do really well in a computer science degree program as well. So to me, that's where the justice comes in.
I don't know if you're aware, but we do have the Career and College Academy, and one of the things we do is IT, and to give students a taste, and that's open to all students.
Awesome.
That would have that choice.
Yeah,
So
and
it's a really good thing we're doing here.
Yeah, and we're trying to incorporate that, so that broader definition of computer science is meant to include some of that hands-on work that you might get through Career College Academy. And so we've had conversations with Gary Cresson and his team. Both of our high schools this fall are offering an AP computer science course. As Ms. Peterson says, this is an AP course that doesn't have an AP prerequisite. You can enter having high school algebra as your background, as your math background. So it's a very approachable AP course for essentially non-traditional students to have immediate success and gain college credit as early as a sophomore or junior in a field of interest.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could kind of break it down a little bit. I know we're kind of at the 50,000-foot level, and this is a 5-year partnership, so obviously I know that we're not going to be at full capacity in the fall, but when you're saying computer science for all of our students, what does that look like in the fall of 2019 versus what does that look like in the fall of 2024? And when you're saying like some of these, we're going to have 2 sites to pilot this in the fall, is that going to be, we're going to be changing those schools to where computer science is the foundation and everything kind of stems from there, kind of like how our Hillcrest is our Artful Learning Center, how everything is focused on art and everything kind of stems from there and moves out? Is that what we're looking at doing, but with computer science, where everything is going to move out from computer science?
Yeah, I think that's a good close approximation. We've engaged 2 of our elementaries, Indian Mounds and Poplar Bridge. It's a slightly different approach because we're trying to tailor it to the school. What is their entry point? How do they want to proceed? What is their capacity? That would be what I would call our deep dive or our immersion approach at those 2 schools. We're not turning those into community schools with busing and that sort of thing. But we do feel like the principles of computer science would benefit all. And so we're also taking an all approach, by which I mean we have exciting things happening at every single school, only it's happening at the behest of some hero teachers who've done their own research, who brought in their own resources, and who are hosting their own events for kids. What we're trying to do then is have that experience, whether you go to Olson or you go to Indian Mounds or you go to Valley View, that you would have some sort of common experience at all schools, as well as a deeper immersion process if you go to Poplar Bridge or Indian Mounds. And then secondly, it's important to us that we have articulation. So if you come out of Indian Mounds or Poplar Bridge really fired up and you've had 3 or 4 years of experience in computer science, I'm talking about 2024, you need a place to go to continue that experience. And so we're in conversations with Oak Grove Middle School as being the articulated pathway for those kids coming out of 5th grade, and then potentially branching into both of our high schools. All of this, again, is in response to how our community responds and how our student body responds. And so I could see expanding or contracting based on the needs of students and the desires of students as expressed by their PGPs.
Okay, so at the elementary level, that isn't those 2 schools, it's going to be kind of like a small piece of computer science that they're going to be, that's going to be mandatory, it's going to be part of the curriculum that they're going to have to undertake?
Might not be mandatory, but where you might have an after-school coding club at Oak Grove, but we don't have one yet at Olson, you will have a common experience at both of those schools. You'll have an opportunity at each of those schools, no matter where your child goes.
Okay, so, and when you were talking about all and equity and everything for all of our students, what about those kids that go to the other 8 elementary schools that don't go to the 2 that have the pilot program that are really super interested in the computer science? Are there any plans to where they can attend those schools, or has there been look at any of that, or? Yeah,
it's hard for us to do that. I hear what you're saying. It's hard for us to do that analysis at this early stage, and we're getting a little bit into the 10-foot level instead of the 30,000-foot level. But we have an open enrollment process by which some families can choose to go, as you said, to a community school or a program that's taught at Valley View Middle School versus Olson Middle School. So we know there is some innate ability for families to move. We would be looking at measuring what is the amount of desire and then trying to respond to that.
So at the end of 5 years, we could have 5 of our schools that are focused on this, because I think there's
It
going
is
to be
potentially possible, yeah.
yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of desire for this. You know,
That would
being
be
someone
great.
who has elementary kids and speaking to other elementary parents and to kids of that age, that's what they're into is computer science, and so I think it's going to be hard for us to keep up with demand. I think.
And that wouldn't be a bad
That wouldn't be a bad problem to
have.
have. Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Carl.
This really does sound good. I was really interested in the aspect of the 85 to 15% male versus female. In some schools around the country, they're going back to girls' classes and boys' classes. And be it in math or science or something like that, just to allow the girls to explore more without having the competition, with the boys, and the same thing with the boys. Has there been any talk about how we might address some of those and give some more opportunity for the female side, of the pie, so that we can enlarge that? And then at the same time, just picking up on what Tom had talked about, coding classes after school. And is there going to be any additional teacher training that's going to be required for some of these classes?
Yeah, I'll take those in reverse order, and then I'll ask Lana to speak about some of the, girls, what do you do specially for a girls-only environment? Because I think she has some experience there. In terms of training for teachers, we have a limited amount of resources in terms of professional development for our teaching staff. There's too many good ideas and not enough time, essentially. It's also not a bad problem to have. We are allocating some this next year as a grounding year. So you're taking a deep dive if you're at one of those 2 elementaries, but you're getting a grounding no matter where you're at across all of our elementaries, so that we can get all programs up to a certain level and capacity. As I said, you can walk into any of our elementaries and find something happening, but sometimes it's in 2nd grade music, which every kid has exposure to, and sometimes it's in 4th grade in this one of 3 sections. And so our attempt there would be to make some sort of universality for that.
I have been involved in several research projects where we study girl-only environments, and it is very beneficial for girls to engage. As frankly, if you saw the group that was just up here, there was one girl. And a lot of times I've been that girl too, and there's a lot of cultural aspects that we don't even notice are happening in situations like that, that tend to make girls feel uncomfortable. And so that's one of the pieces of the professional development, is kind of looking at what are we doing, what are counselors, what kids are counselors inviting to be a part of these, are they seeing a boy and so they're saying you should sign up for computer science? There's so many layers of why there are girls and boys in these situations. But I will say research is showing that the best practices to engage girls in computer science are also work really well with students of color too. And so when we think about engaging girls, that is really important. However, I think it's also important to ensure that we're looking at the racial divide that happens as well. You saw up there that 75% are white, and then there was a large population of Asian. And really what we're finding nationally is that actually means Chinese. And so when we look at what does Asian mean in Minnesota too, we have a large Hmong population, and ensuring that not just focusing on girls, but focusing on students of color as well with that. So maybe that translates more to what's the old school way of teaching computer science, and how can we update that so students really feel ownership over this work that they're doing in schools?
So all those options are available and to be looked at in terms of the success of the student.
Yeah, we have I apologize for not knowing the name of this teacher, but we have a teacher at Olson Middle School doing a girls coding program. Do you know which program it is?
It's probably Technovation,
Yeah,
which is out of Code Savvy, one of our partners up there. It's an amazing program that is for girls out of school time, where they have to decide about an app based on our community-based need. And so they research the community-based need. They figure out, well, what is this need and how could we build an app to address that need? And so before they even touch technology, they're out there doing surveys, doing research, what does this need look like? And then they build the app. It doesn't have to be a full build, but has to be semi-working, and then they actually go and do the pitch for a group of people. So having that outside audience look at yours and give you feedback is so engaging. And they have grown exponentially in their programming. It's actually a worldwide program, and we have a Minnesota contingent here. It's great.
And so one of our math teachers at Olson Middle School has, as Director Bennett had said, has created the opportunity and then found that was overwhelmed with the number of girls who wanted to participate. And so there's a very healthy program at Olson Middle School, if you happen to be going to Olson Middle School, that is.
If you happen to be going. And also I know some of the Olson Middle School has a choir that starts at 7 o'clock in the morning, has an option, so some of these could be done after school, before school, or something like that, just to get the interest going and let everybody know what's happening. Sounds good.
All right. Hearing no further questions, let's vote on this resolution. All in favor of the resolution, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Thank you very much for your presentation. I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Did we read that resolution?
We read it.
That brings us to teacher evaluation annual report presentation. By Andy Kubas and Kelly Spees to come to the table.
Good evening. Chair Barlotta, Superintendent Fujitaki, school board members. It's our pleasure to be here today to talk about our teacher evaluation presentation. In preparation for this, a couple weeks ago, I was on the MDE site and I was looking at the timeline for what we colloquially call QComp. And it said in June, the last thing to do is do an annual report must be presented to the school board by June 15th. So here we are. And so your role tonight is there's no action needed. It's just a presentation to give you our annual report on QComp, and beside me I have Kelly Spees, who leads that. I want to say a couple of things just as a prelude to set Kelly's presentation up. It's not been quite a year that I moved over to take over instruction, and so one of the things when I moved over with my leadership group, which includes Kelly, we talked about the vision, Bloomington Public Schools' vision, and so Bloomington Public Schools creates pathways to career and college success. And we talked about what does that mean for learning and teaching. And we believe our role in this is to make sure that each student is making progress on their respective pathway. And there's a couple different ways that you can do that, and the way that most people think about it is what can we do to help students? How can we intervene? What programs can we build? And those are great ways. But also another way to think about it is what can we be doing for our teachers? What capacity building can we be doing and teaching that we can be doing for them so that they're better equipped to help out the students along their pathways. And so there's a lot of different ways to get at that. Kelly and her team do a wonderful job of that. And so as we move forward through that, and that becomes what we want to do in learning and teaching, what I presented to that group was looking at our vision, our leadership group, looking at our vision, how do you know that what you're doing is helping students along their pathway? And all four of the leaders answered that question very well. What's the data, I asked, that says that you're making a difference? And they were able to present that as well. And then the third question I asked them was, what's standing in your way still to do your job better? And Kelly and her team did a wonderful job of answering that. And just a credit to what you're about to see. I don't know if Kelly remembers, but what the issue was that was standing in their way is just the caseload, the amount of teachers that we have who deserve that and appreciate that PD. And so what Kelly and her team did was just thinking about differentiating the treatment, that not every teacher gets exactly the same treatment. If we were to go to the hospital, not everybody gets the same medicine at the hospital. It's curtailed to what you want and what's going to make you better. So credit to Kelly and her team for picking that up and taking their resources and using them efficiently to differentiate the PD that happens for all of our teachers. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me tonight. We are completing year 7 of QComp. And this report is a mandatory report, but the way we do it can change each year. And I've changed it up a little bit each year, and this year we're going to talk to you about the Pathways milestones and how teachers are preparing students to meet those pathway milestones. So this is a voluntary agreement between the BFT and the Bloomington Public Schools, and this was initiated in March and April of 2012. This agreement that we have between the BFT and public schools is reviewed annually by the Teacher Evaluation Governing Board. If we do make any adjustments to the MOU, then it is voted on by teachers. The Teacher Evaluation Governing Board oversees the program, and this is the makeup of that team. Wonderful support. We have Andy Kubis, and we have Mary Burrows from Human Resources. We have secondary administrative leadership, and we have teacher leadership from both secondary and elementary. So what are those components? So we have the teacher observation and evaluation, the job embedded professional development, which is really the main key to our program, the goal setting that teachers do and sites do for the Department of Education, and the leadership opportunities. We have 200 teacher leaders that lead teams at each grade level. Sometimes they're content, sometimes they're cross-content leaders of their small teams that work on these strategies and bring data to their meetings so that they can chart the growth of our students. The sources that we use to collect data, the most important source is the engagement of our teachers in this process. So we have 890 staff people that are totally engaged in this process. They participate in all of the meetings, the pre-meeting that we do before the actual observation, and the post-meeting. And a wonderful thing that's occurred through the years is many teachers ask for additional meetings and additional observations, maybe not in a formal capacity, but just to check on something that they've discussed and they want to collect some data on how it's working for students. We also give a PLC facilitator survey each year, and I ask similar questions, plus an additional questions each year. So it's really nice to see that data over our 7-year term and how more engaged teachers are at utilizing a variety of strategies to engage students and to also meet their needs when they are not achieving. And then another part of the teacher evaluation, or QComp, are our probationary teachers. And we work very closely with the mentors, and we also do a survey of all of our new teachers each year to make sure that we're continuing to meet their needs, because that is a changing group of people that come into our district each year. So our observation and our evaluation process, the key here is that coaching and the professional development that happens individually for teachers based on the feedback that we give teachers. We have a menu of data collection tools that we use, and it is now shared metro-wide. I've shared with you in years past. I am the leader of the metro area QComp coordinators. There are 17 different sites. We meet 4 to 5 times a year, and we provide training for our coaches, and they love our data collection tools. And we do a lot of sharing on very creative and unique ways to collect that data and to give it back to the teachers and to the PLCs. We have a highly trained group of people. We only have 16 hours of required training by MDE, but we get, at a minimum, 88 hours of training for each of our coaches and evaluators. We work closely with site administration and the coordinators, the special education coordinators, to do inter-rater reliability. That would be a shared observation that a coach would do with the administrator to make sure that we're giving very specific feedback in a very similar fashion to teachers. If they don't see consistency in that process, it's hard for them to grow. We continue to use that Danielson rubric that is aligned with our state standards. And probationary teachers are also using that rubric, and we specifically work on those best instructional practices with those new teachers. The professional development, which is a very important key in what we do. Teachers work in those PLCs that meet on an average of 50 minutes per week, but also it's that support that they're given that Andy talked about, that differentiated support based on what they need. One teacher may need more classroom management. Another teacher may need more content resources. Another teacher may need just knowledge of students. And we're equipped in our team to provide that differentiated support for our staff. We also have a compensation structure related to the evaluation process. Teachers must pass their evaluation to continue to be compensated and also to get a step or a lane. So the ongoing professional development is that PLC facilitator training. We bring these facilitators in the fall and do a whole group training with them. And in the spring, we do a combination of bringing them here for training, but also providing an online training course for those leaders of their professional learning communities. We have monthly seminars for our new staff, and our coaches and mentors are on site and available to provide ongoing support. And I'm really happy to say that that has expanded a lot. The coaches and the mentors are providing training on workshop days at both of the high schools. We have provided training at the middle schools, and although we've only done it at a few of the elementary schools, next year that is going to expand, and all the elementary schools will be utilizing our coaches and mentors for training their staff. So what's happening on these milestones? I'm going to start with our smallest learners, our Early Learning Center, Pond, and the Family Learning, or Southwood and Pond. One of the focuses that these groups of teachers are working on is really helping families so that they can better support the development of their young child. So teachers, our coach, which is Tim Suzuki, he goes on family visits. He provides a lot of feedback to the teams that are in these homes working with parents on how receptive were the parents. Did they miss anything? Were there some opportunities that they can take in the future as they continue to work with those families? Also, trying to find those early indicators of students that may have ASD, also other disabilities, that when we catch them early, we can really make a difference for those students. We have some site-based early learning services at Indian Mounds, Oak Grove, Washburn, and Valley View. And I'm extremely proud of this PLC. They it's very difficult to meet in a PLC cross-district because there's additional travel time, and we know that our Minnesota winters are very hard to navigate across our district. But these teachers rotate so that they can actually be in each other's classrooms. We know that the classroom setup and where students play and learn are very important. So they rotate around so that they can get that visual of the classroom and shared ideas and strategies on how to use these resources. That heavy focus on those kindergarten skills and helping those students to be kindergarten ready. At our elementary schools, I'm just going to highlight some of the things that they've been working at the various elementary schools. We've had a lot of work on the social emotional learning and those zones of regulation, the professional development that our counselors and social workers do with teachers to help students be more ready to learn. And we collect data on how are those strategies working, and are we putting together an environment that the students can learn best in. We also have a lot of co-teaching going on. Many thanks to Best Engline and Carrie Young as they support those co-teaching pairs throughout the district. And we collect a lot of data. Carrie Young developed a special rubric for these co-teaching partnerships so that we can give feedback on how those teachers are sharing in the learning of all students in the classroom. Also, it was very great to hear John's project upcoming, because we do a lot of work connecting our wonderful resources in the technology department to our teachers and to our PLCs. And we have a lot of PLCs that are really ready to expand out and do just the work that John was talking about. We have teachers using Seesaw, Google Forms, Buddy journals, that text coding that was talked about, and then a wide variety of readers' response notebooks. It's not just writing in a notebook or having a discussion anymore. Students are able to track what they're reading in really great ways through using technology. As we talk about the middle level, we're very excited next year to talk about a change that we are going to have, and it's an option in one of the 3 observations. This year we piloted at the middle level, and what that is that teachers can go and watch other teachers teach. Instead of just getting that feedback from the coach, they can actually go and observe another teacher and count that as one of their observations. It was amazing to see the new strategies that they learned and the partnerships and the collaboration that was created in doing this. And next year, we're really happy to roll that out district-wide. And so if a teacher is not on high cycle and is not probationary, they can do one of their 3 observations as a shared observation with a peer. And it could be at their building, or it could be cross-district as well. Our high schools are working on many different ways to engage our learners. We worked very diligently with our team of teachers that are doing the online courses to really help them to look for new ways to collect data, since this is such a unique format in teaching our students. We also had a lot of PLCs that worked on decreasing those failures from trimester to trimester. It's very difficult for a student to catch up once they start to fail. So we worked very purposefully with those teachers and those PLCs to prevent that from happening, and certainly to prevent it from reoccurring trimester to trimester. And those transitions, we have a wonderful PLC, a very large PLC at Jefferson High School that really focused on that transition from 8th to 9th grade, and focused on what they could do to better educate those 9th graders on what it takes to be a high school student, and how to give them specific feedback on how to be successful and how to create their own pathways through our PGP. That work has been shared with Kennedy teachers, and we're hoping to see more PLCs do that work in the future. So I'll take any questions that you have. I want to say thank you for sharing this. Especially appreciated hearing about teachers being able to go and observe other teachers, because you can get so isolated because you're all busy in your own classrooms. You don't get to see what others are doing, and that can be really inspirational. And I think that is very helpful for teachers to go, oh, I could do that, and then adopt that and try it. It doesn't always work. We're all different personalities, and sometimes we try something that's unique to that teacher. But I think it's great to have those opportunities. Just for the people out there, PLC was used a lot, but not given a definition. I believe that's professional learning communities. And I think that also I actually heard from a teacher who was a new teacher, and she was talking about how much she appreciated the support she got from those within her professional learning community. So not questions so much as just I'm very pleased that we have this program, and I thank you for your leadership. You've done a great job, and I will want to just hear more about this from year to year.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair? Well, first of all, thank you for coming, Kelly. It's always nice to have you in our office. Andy, same thing. Kelly, you may have touched on this in the beginning, so I apologize if you answered the question. I'm curious to know how would anyone go about editing how this process happens? I make a general assumption that it's not the same version from 7 years ago. If somebody has input into, can we try this, can we try that? You mentioned the MOU. Is it as formal as changing language in the MOU? Is there some flexibility within the process? Maybe we can try this for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I mean, I realize I'm up at 35,000 feet without getting down to ground level.
Yeah.
Is there a quick and easy answer to that?
Well, the key to the success is the continuity in the program. And so we do have some flexibility, but we really want the process to be solidly the same for all staff. We want the feedback to be similar. We want to use the same indicators of best practice, because that's how we grow and that's how we improve. With that being said, we are flexible in that, we are going to allow this peer-to-peer option, and we are flexible in differentiating. If we have teachers that are very capable and need an enhancement that's just kind of above and beyond, we do those things with them to meet their needs. Also, those teachers that struggle year to year with students, they may struggle year to year with students and some management things. We can focus and tailor the resources and training and support for them. But in terms of using our process and our rubrics, that cannot change without changing our memo of understanding.
Can I just add that the magic behind the curtain, if you will, is the program has such a great reputation, and it takes a lot of trust for a practitioner to have somebody come and sit in who they might have met earlier on in the year and critique what they do and then accept feedback from it. So it's a testament to Kelly and your team that they've created that trust with the preceding reputation, and that comes with consistency that I think you were talking about, Kelly.
Right, exactly.
Great, thank you, appreciate that.
Anyone else? All right, let's give it to Tom and then Jim.
Yes, when you were saying earlier that for the teachers to get the compensation, they have to pass. So I was wondering if you can tell me, what does that look like? What is passing, and how many of our teachers aren't passing? And those ones that aren't, so they're not getting the compensation, but they're also not getting step and lane advancement?
Correct.
And then those teachers that aren't passing, or is it the same teachers every year? Or I don't know if you could just speak a little bit more to that.
Right. No, that would be different teachers, because by and large, the teachers that don't pass are our probationary teachers that are in that intensive training that we do in those first 3 years. We have such a wonderful mentor program that's very good at supporting the teacher through those 3 years. The numbers change each year, so I can't say that, it's 4 a year or 14 a year. That changes based on our probationary teachers. They very seldom do tenured teachers not pass, and the pass is getting proficient. We have unsatisfactory, basic, proficient, and distinguished, and teachers must be proficient in the areas of their domain to actually pass the evaluation. But where we see the majority of teachers not getting that compensation or step a lane would be in the probationary years of service.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to say, I think that the peer-to-peer mentoring or observation is a great idea. I mean, because when you're teaching, you don't get to see other teachers teach the same thing you're teaching. So it's just a nice break to go into someone else's classroom, and so when you might be a fourth grade teacher and hear, well, this fourth grade teacher's doing this, that's really excellent, and you go, well, I want to go see what they're doing. So it helps the teachers improve their craft and see what else people are doing that they might incorporate in their own teaching style. So hopefully that's something that continues and it's able to work, for all grade levels everywhere. So thanks for that. Thank you.
As a quick follow-up then, how, if a teacher leaves her class, his or her class, to go over someone else, who takes that class?
Well, we, at the middle level, the way we covered is they by and large use their prep time, and we would maybe take the class for 15 or 20 minutes, one of the coaches, to allow them to do that. We do not have sub-time or anything like that, so we're going to have to get creative with people covering each other's class so that it can happen. But we were able to do it for just about every middle school teacher this past fall, and it worked out really well.
Builds the trust and the comradeship between the teachers also. If, especially if they come back and the students say, hey, you should teach us this way, according to Mr. So-and-so, and all of that. But tell us the distinction between mentors and coaches. Are they all teachers or are they TOSAs?
Yeah, they're all TOSAs, teachers on special assignment. Mentors work specifically with our probationary teachers in year 1, 2, and 3, and the coaches work with our tenured staff.
Okay, and then they have 88 hours of training, so that's during the school day, or do they meet after?
It's a combination. It's a combination of work that they do prior to taking the role, a lot of summer work that they do, and then the training that we get throughout the school year.
Here's an interesting question. Is there a waiting list for TOSAs and mentors?
I always have many applicants for the positions that are open.
One other question, sorry, Madam Chair. The site-based early learning, where they can rotate, how many teachers are in that department or grouping that allows them to be able to rotate?
They rotate between the 4 buildings, and there are 8 teachers that would rotate from building to building. So they have an opportunity to meet in each other's classrooms.
Good. Thank you.
That's right into my question. So I had the same question about that group as you had about the older kids. So who's covering their classes when they're doing the rotation? How does that work?
That's before their school day.
Okay. Okay, so they're not actually observing them with the students. They're going to meet.
Correct.
Okay,
They're
that's-
meeting as a personalized learning community together at those
Okay.
sites before the
And-
school day.
And then one other thing. First of all, I wanted to also thank you because not only are you showing great leadership in our district doing this, but doing this statewide. Thank you for continuing that leadership and promoting best practices across the whole state and being the leader there. So thank you so much for doing that. But I also had a question, the same one that Director Bennett asked, about teachers not getting the compensation. And so is that a number that we could get in the future, just so we kind of have an idea how many teachers aren't getting it, that kind of thing? So we can look over the years and see, if, changes and if we've reduced the number and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's always I did give that information the first few years of the program, but the number is very small.
Okay.
That don't get it's not really a data source that informs us. What better informs us is the one-on-one interactions with staff.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And now I'll invite Rod Zitkovich for our preliminary 2019-2020 budget presentation.
Chair Barlotta, Superintendent Fujitaki, board members. This is the first presentation of the 2019-20 board proposal for the budget. As you know, this process starts first part in July when we start providing information for levy. That information then is brought forward throughout the year with enrollment projections and the rest to come up with a final budget here that is being presented tonight. So this presentation tonight is to provide information for the board to make their final decision on the 2019-20 budget. There's no formal action that needs to be tonight. The board will bring a actual resolution to the board at the next board meeting on the 24th. So if you kind of look at our overall, where we talk about our strategic plan and where finance is underneath that as a resource plan to support the areas that you were talking about over the last two presentations. And under that financial plan, there's the annual budget. So looking at a timeline for the process, tonight we'll be going through the budget, which includes the capital and deferred maintenance, debt service, our insurances, and our internal service funds, and then our three operating funds, food service, community services, and the general fund and transportation. And as I mentioned, all those funds will be brought back in a resolution on the 24th for board action. So just kind of a breakdown within those categories, the capital and deferred maintenance, you have operating capital, all facilities and health and safety, our capital projects levy, which is technology and security. We have debt service, which is our bond, principal and interest payments on an annual basis. Our insurance and internal services are self-insured. Our OPEB, other post-employment benefit, the dollars that are put aside in trust, and then also the debt to pay down the bonds that were sold back in 2009 that we refunded about, I believe, just over a year ago. And then the internal services fund that helps us with our vacation and severance. Then the three operating funds, as I mentioned before. So we start out with the operating capital fund. Operating capital includes building improvements, permanent attached fixtures, telecommunication equipment, copy machines, textbooks, vehicles, and musical instruments. So if we look at the current budget that we're at, we started the year at just over $7.3 million. We show a spend down of $2.5 million during the current year. A lot of that were projects that were done over last summer that the expenditures will be done, have already been completed. So we're projecting our ending fund balance to be at about $4.8 million this year. If you look at next year's budget, we're showing a $4.6 million revenue, expenditures at $4.8 million for a shortfall of $247,000. You can see that, as I mentioned, with the current year budget, it's a substantially less expenditure spending this year. It was more due to the projects that were done in 18-19. If we go look at all facilities, this is where the board actually at the last meeting also approved the 10-year plan for these alt facility projects that we need to be approved by the state. You can kind of see all the different categories within. These are all our, technically our deferred maintenance projects from year to year. If we look at our overall projected, we started out at $9.7 million. Our revenue of $28 million, and part of that $28 million is we sold bonds during this year for the next 2 year of projects. Expenditures for current year are just over $13 million for an ending fund for revenues over expenditures of just over $15 million. Again, dollars carried forward for the future for an ending fund balance then of $24.7 million. As we carry that forward to this year, you see that the revenue's only $3.8 million. What that is just the pay-as-you-go levy portion, which is that we do on the annual levy. And then you see the difference is technically the bond proceeds that we received this year. Our expenditures, because of the Valley View project that we're going year-round, it's substantially more than we've done in the past because it's technically you're doing 2 years worth of dollars worth of projects in 1 year. So it's a negative spend down of $23 million. So the ending fund balance at the end of 1920 is $1.3 million. Yeah, as I mentioned, we sold bonds of $25.5 million this last year for these next 2 years of projects. Capital Projects Levy, which is our technology and safety. Current year, we're showing a projected started the year at $4.3 million of fund balance. Expenditures over revenues by $1.8 million, and as we go through some of our projects, the big projects this year were video cameras at our high schools, at our middle schools. We're finishing up on the elementaries. We'll have the elementaries ready by the start of next school year. The next move into this next year is a new two-way radio system within the district. That should be also in place by the start of the next school year. And just to kind of see the breakdown of our revenue generation within the area, $7.4 million of the budget is going to technology, $600,000 is going to safety and security. So I'll stop at this point. Any questions on capital deferred maintenance areas?
Just a quick one. Rod, I know we're doing lots of work over at Valleyville Middle, and that was the project that you're talking about that's going to just sort of last throughout the year. I know it just started 3 days ago, but do we have fairly good confidence that we'll meet all of our goals and benchmarks with construction?
Yes, I think we have a better opportunity to do it rather than just doing a 3-month project and having to be ready for the start of the school year. I mean, the plan is we do things in stages, and those stages, it gives us a little more flexibility over time when we're doing the project. So I'm very confident that by doing a year-long program, we're probably going to be more efficient and also more on time.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Oh, there we go. Next area is debt service. Again, the debt service is our interest and principal payments on bonds that the district sells. We started the year out in 18-19 with just under $700,000. We show a revenue over expenditures of $700,000. Remembering that how the state requires us to do is whatever our principal and interest payments are for the current year, we're required to levy 105% of that, and then over time, the state will take some of those back on future levy cycles. And as you can kind of see, the drop-off with the next year is part of that whole thing of the state taking on the last bond, taking back some of the excess. So that's why you see our expenditures being over our revenues, and also the addition to our new all-facility bonds, showing that we're spending down just over, or about almost $400,000 with an ending fund balance of $1 million. Questions on debt service? Move on next to our self-insured, both dental and health. Dental is, we started the year coming into 18-19 at $1.2 million. We're showing a small expenditures over revenues of about $73,000. Remember, the board has approved increases over probably the last 6 or 7 years of a 0 increase within dental. So we've, within insurance committee, have talked about different ways of using the things of maintaining it without having to do additional increases in the premiums. So that's kind of seeing the increase. Revenues pretty much flat between the 2 years. Expenditures a slight increase. So the projection is showing an $85,000 spend down, with showing still having about a $1.1 million fund balance at the end of the year. And as I mentioned, a 0 premium increase. If we go to self-insured, insured medical, we started the year at just $10,700,000. We were budgeting about $158,000 revenue over expenditures, so putting more dollars away for the future to control premiums. I would say, based on what I'm seeing so far to date, I think we'll probably come in this year better than we anticipated it coming in at. If you look at, and that's pretty much why the budget is, it's where it's at. The budget for this next year is showing, with a 1% increase in premiums, showing that revenue will still be about $565,000 over expenditures. So putting an additional having an ending fund balance of $11 million. With the board's approval, what we've done over probably the last 3 cycles is we've done 2-year improvements to the premium increases to tie more with annual contracts, 2-year contracts with the bargaining units. What we've seen over the last couple of years is we've done the 2 years before this were 3% increases. Now we're at 1% increases. What it's showing is, based on the great work of the insurance committee and the rest, that we've been able to put money away to protect ourselves in the future in case we have some bad years, but not having to do substantial increases to be able to accomplish that.
Okay, Rod, on those 2 funds, the dental and medical, the fact that dental only has $1 million fund balance and this is $11 million, they're each maintained separately, so there's no opportunity or consideration to take from the medical and put into the dental just to.
Right, and the dental, I mean, the dental has been pretty much strong for quite a while. Part of the issue with dental is that it's a fixed amount that is provided for individuals. So it's, you don't really have that unless everybody went up to the max in 1 year. I mean, you'd see some really huge spend down in that similar case. But for the most part, normal use of a dental plan, it doesn't have as much exposure as you would in a medical plan where you could have significant costs with one or two claims.
Yeah, I got a question for you on the self-insured medical fund. I was wondering if you could just give us a breakdown of the revenue and where it comes from. I know some of it's come from premium, some of it's come from general fund. If you had an idea of a breakdown of that?
Well, the full amount is from premiums and interest on the fund balance.
Okay, so
So that's
all?
the true amount of revenue. Now, that premium comes from twofold. It comes from the district, where the district is 100% single coverage. And then it comes from employees that are taking single plus one and family, where it's a 70-30, where the district picks up 70% and the employee picks up 30.
Okay, thank you.
Our other post-employment trust, what it's showing is that we have a beginning fund balance of $14.2 million, spending down about $850,000 to have an ending fund balance of $13 million. Kind of the similar thing this current year, the same amount of spend down, looking at based on our actuarial studies that we've done on an annual basis. This is the portion of retirement and obligations that we have into the future that we're paying off on an annual basis. This fund right here helps, technically, if we didn't have this trust fund right here, this would be an additional $1 million that the general fund would have to pick up on an annual basis. Debt service on the bonds that were sold back in 2009 and refinanced a little over a year ago. With this, is showing that, again, similar type situation, having to do 105%, and then backing it off coming through. That's why you see a slight spend down this next year, was saying a fund balance of $144,000. Internal Service Fund, again, this is the, to pay for other vacation payouts and other severance items that are not covered under the OPEB. You see an expenditure of $150,000. Some of that is to help in part of our, the budget, and the rest with the increase in TRA rates from the statewide that we picked up over this last year. Questions on self-insurance, internal service?
What's a TRA rate?
Teacher Retirement Association.
Okay.
Okay. Now we move on to the operating funds. Start out with food service. Kind of a little summary of some of the assumptions, because you'll see with especially the food service and the general fund, there's a little more assumptions to the process versus some of the first funds that we talked about. So you look in operations, current year, we looked at coming up with new menu items and the rest, and on the revenue side, we had a 5-cent increase in prices. Looking at the 1920, as we met with the board a couple times, we're looking at doing a pilot with Minneapolis School District at our Kennedy High School, Valley View Middle School, Middle School, and Indian Mounds Elementary. Also, kind of trying to do, continuing looking at other menu changes at other sites too. Always kind of trying to stay a step ahead of things and keeping the menu fresh as an overall. The request within the budget is for a 10% increase, or 10-cent increase on meals this year. As you can see, we usually do comparison to our neighbors. Is kind of how we determine with price increases. And what we try to do is stay in the middle. So if you look at our elementary prices right now, we're at $265 going to $275. With others, of at least what we know have going for price increases this year, we're right in the middle with Eden Prairie being on the high end at $3 and Richfield being at the low at $2.65. If we go to middle school, same thing, additional 10 cents. We're at $3. Top end, again, Eden Prairie at $3.35, and Burnsville, this time at the lower end at $2.80. Going to high school, with us going up to $3.05, Burnsville being the lowest in this category, also too, at $2.80, and Eden Prairie at the $3.35. It's just kind of a little history of where our prices have been with lunches. Elementary back in 16-17 was at $2.50, so we've gone up over the last few years, up 25 cents across the board. Same thing with middle school, high school, and adult meals have gone up 35 cents. Breakfast, since four of our, all but three of our sites are free breakfast for all. We really haven't touched the price of breakfast over the same period of time, so that's why you see it being flat. And those three schools that don't have free breakfast are Jefferson, Ridgeview, and Hillcrest. So if we look at the overall budget for food service, came into the year at just under $1 million fund balance. We're showing projected expenditures over revenues of $161,000 for ending fund balance of $836,000. Looking at this next year's budget, showing not as large of a spend down of about $49,000 for an ending fund balance of just under $800,000. Questions on food service?
Just a quick one, if I may. Rod, you had mentioned, you don't need to go back, there was a cost comparison between some other districts. I hate to use this analogy, but is it an apples-to-apples comparison? Are they serving exactly what Bloomington serves? Or is that more of a student body that is similar to Bloomington?
What's being served, I don't know if it's exactly the same, but all districts are required to follow federal guidelines and state guidelines of what is served on a daily basis. So what the menu is made up of and how you produce your menus has to be very similar no matter what district you're in. So when we compare pricing, I think a student getting a meal in another district versus getting a meal in Bloomington is probably a pretty consistent meal between the two. So the pricing is pretty consistent to evaluate it in that regard.
Okay, I'm just, one of them, I think, was, for high school was $2.80, and then the high, that was the low end, the high end was like 3 something. And they're serving the same proteins, the same carbs, the same salt, sugars, that kind of stuff. But that's like 45 cents difference. So it's just, so they're essentially serving the same stuff, but they're charging their students more, or it costs them more, or?
It could be, I mean, participation drives those type of things. It's looking at what they need to charge, both the elasticity of what more they can charge,
Sure.
that people are still buying, but then also too is what is their labor and food cost compared to one district to the other? What is their free and reduced amounts, one district to the other? So, I mean, some of those concepts have to play into it, but I think is every free and reduced student gets the same amount from the state and the federal government per lunch. So I think comparing what a paid lunch is, it's pretty comparable, I think, in that regard too, when we compare from one district to another.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I find it interesting that even with the 10% increase to lunches, we're still going to be operating at a loss. So is there any amount of increase that would make that budget neutral, or would it be like $1 increase or something like that? Do you have any idea what that would be?
What we found is when you increase it more than 10 cents, you start losing
Yeah.
people of things. So you're approximately, you're looking at somewhere between $25,000 to $30,000 a year for every 5 cents.
Okay.
I mean, that's kind of the best way to look. You know, we've projected some, you know, that we're not gonna gain the whole 10 cents.
Mhm.
Because
You'll lose some
I would
people.
imagine there might be some people that with upping it another 10 cents, at least for part of the year, might say, I'd rather bring in an own lunch or do something different.
Okay, so the meal that an elementary student gets and a middle school student gets and a high school student, is it all the same meal?
No, it's a different meal for each of the different levels.
Okay.
But each of the levels, compared from district to district, is the same requirement that we
I'm
have
saying
to have.
within our district.
Yes, it's a different meal.
Okay, because obviously there's a difference in price, so I'm
Yeah.
assuming they're getting
No.
a larger meal or something like that at the higher levels.
And the interesting thing is, it is a different, each level,
Mhm.
but both the state and the federal government give us the same amount for each
Yeah.
of the meals.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, thank you.
Community Service Fund, just kind of give both the public and the board a refresher on what's all in the community education program. So you have community programs, which is adult enrichment, youth enrichment, aquatics, Galaxy, which is a middle school program for after school and before school for students, Kid Safari, the same for elementary school. Early learning, which is the early child family ed, the school screening, Early Learners Academy, school readiness, home visits. You have your adult learning exchange and the adult basic education. Their facility management, the overseeing of building reservations, the activity center, fitness memberships, the turf at the 2 high schools, and then the overall operations of general community education. And then the other type of programs that are more kind of the flow-through, where we would get funds from somewhere else, and that they would come through. Same thing with non-public. It's not really a true community ed fund. It's they work it, and any shortfalls in that are picked up from the general fund. So if we look at community services budget, community services started the year at just under $5.5 million. We show a spend down of about $92,000 for an ending fund balance of $5.4 million. If we look at the next year coming, we have a larger spend down of $494,000. Part of that is some of the overhead chargeback that the district, the general fund, as part of budget reductions in the general fund, was charging for space, utilities, and custodial services from community ed programming to that the general fund picks up the cost of those programs. Questions on community services?
Nope.
Okay. Move on to the general fund. Look at overall revenue for the general fund, which as I mentioned, includes transportation, is $145.6 million. Of that, 72.4% of it comes from the state. 21.7 comes from levy, 3.1 federal, and 2.8 for other would be fees or any donations to the district. Just another way of looking at the breakdown, you can kind of see the state is your formula revenue, your special ed, and others, compensatory dollars, early, English learner dollars, would all be in that $105 million. Levy is your operating referendum, safe schools, equity, career tech, and then other levies regarding that. Your federal, which is title programs, federal special ed. And then other, as I mentioned, is fees, interest, tuition, any rental that we do of the facilities from a general fund perspective. So overall, the general fund, since the state is the big part of the revenue, the majority of that comes from our formula revenue. And formula revenue is looking at the number of students we have, a dollar amount that the state gives us per student, equates to the amount of money we get. So if we look at our enrollment, for 1920, we have a slight decline in enrollment. I guess the colors on here, I should have checked it. Colors aren't the best on where we're looking at, but overall, what it's showing us is that we're kind of seeing a little bit of, we were growing up until 17, 18, and see it kind of showing a slight decline, both in our average daily membership, which is the actual average of the students sitting in seats all year long, and the computed pupil, which is a weighting system that the state has on students. So anybody that's pre-K through 6th grade is a 1 weighting. Anything from 7th grade to 12th grade is a 1.2 weighting. Just a little bit of, here is some of the big changes back in 15, 16. We worked with Normandale Community College. Instead of running all the PSEO through the state, we run it through our own district and then pay a rate to Normandale Community College directly. We found that to be both a benefit for both the district and the community college, but that's part of the reason for the jump in enrollment there. In 16, 17, the majority of the increase was VPK. It was the first year of VPK. VPK program of anything was that has the student counts being in the general fund and not in early childhood like we had in the past, where there was pre-K programs within early childhood. And then the majority of the increase in 17, 18 was the increase, we started seeing an increase in pre-K special ed. So the second part of it is the dollars per student. The state had an increase of 2% on the formula. So you can kind of see from this over time, based on the revenue and the enrollment that we're getting, we had an increase of $2.7 million from 15, 16 to 16, 17. 17, 18, just under $2 million, $1.2 million last year, and we're projecting a little over $1 million this year. And part of the issue you see that decline is that because we're not getting the full impact of the 2%, because our enrollment has gone from 11,434 down to 11,369.
Madam Chair, Rod, just a question. Going back on the other one, we have a average daily membership and a computed pupil unit. And that's all students. So special ed doesn't get any special weighting.
No, they don't
So
get it.
they're all included. Special ed students are included in all of the general students.
Yep.
Thanks.
So just to kind of breaking it out with, when we kind of allocate out the allowance, which you just talked about, is show that we went from $72 million to 73 million. Special ed went from 18 million to 18.4 million. So kind of those two big categories within the general fund, state dollars, went from 90.2 million up to 91.6 million. The extended time, gifted and talented, English learners, compensatory dollars dropped slightly, and the majority of that drop is due to our compensatory dollars dropped about $400,000 this last year. Levy is up about $1.4 million. Federal is pretty much flat, and so is our other local revenue. So you can see the overall total going from 142.8 to 145.5.
So before you go into expenditures, where in that do we see the levy that the district just passed last year?
That's in the
Is
levy.
that the levy? So after that passed, and we raise it to the cap, it's only an additional, what was it, $1 million?
The first year of the levy was 18-19.
Okay. Okay, so what was it before that? Do you have any idea, if you remember?
It was about, it was a little over $5 million additional.
Okay. And so will we continue to see that trend about a million a year, or we have, what is that increase based on?
The increase is, there's an inflationary increase
Mhm.
built in, which has been approximately about 2% a year.
Okay, thank you.
And some of this, as I mentioned before, with the debt service, there are adjustments because we're submitting to the state in July of 18 for a budget that ends at the end of 2020. So all those different adjustments need to be made, and so there are some adjustments within the levy that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars based on that our enrollment was either up or down, depending on it. So it's not just a pure, this is increasing because the referendum and the 2%. There could be a lot of other factors associated with it.
Okay, so if we didn't pass that referendum, we'd be sitting probably about $26 million is what you would probably
Yeah.
figure?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Expenditures are $146.7 million. If you look at it, the regular instruction, which is classroom and everything that is associated with the classroom, is 48.3%. Vocational is 1%, and then 24.5% for special ed. So you kind of look at that with those 49, you're looking at 85% is truly classroom-type instructional areas. And then if you add in the instructional support and the student support into that, you're looking at close to 90% is of the dollars of this budget is directly toward the classroom. Kind of looking at it, what those categories are, you can see that $70.8 million is for regular instruction, special ed and vocational, $37.4 million. Instructional and student support, those are assistant principals, media, staff development, counseling, 12.9. The custodial maintenance is 8.3 million, transportation 8.1. Administration, which is the superintendent, assistant superintendent, principals, special ed administration, $6 million or 4.1%. Accounting, HR, payroll, technology, 2.4, and then all other, just under $1 million. So if we look at our overall budget, we started out the year at $10 million. The budget was planning for a 1.4 spend down of expenditures over revenues to have an ending fund balance of $8.6 million or 6% of expenditures, remembering that the board policy is 5%. We move on to 1920. We're showing a spend down of $1.1 million to get us to a $7.5 million ending fund balance, or right at our fund balance policy of 5%. Questions on general fund and transportation? So the next stage will be that administration will bring a resolution with all of the funds that were presented tonight for the board's approval to update our systems and start the 1920 school year.
I guess if I can ask one question. I was wondering if you could maybe explain or help me explain to other people, like John Q. taxpayer, they'll say, well, we just passed a referendum and you just got 2% from the state, and they're, keeping special ed across subsidy flat, so why are we still losing money? Why are we still spending more than we're making? What's the easy answer to that, if there is one?
Well, I don't think there's an easy answer for it. The best way of putting it is that our current, when we pay for, and 90% of our budget is salaries and benefits, normal increases within those areas have a larger cost than what the state gives us in the 2%. And as we mentioned when we were going through the referendum process, the referendum was to be able to sustain, and we were already deficit spending before that. So it becomes if we were deficit spending by about $200,000 or $2 million the first year before we did the referendum, and it was for $5 million. After 1 year and compounded to the second year, you pretty much have used up the referendum within the second year. So it's those type of things. I think that's partially why we are at our fund balance policy, and that's why we've talked with the board about that in the 2021 budget, that we're going to have to look at substantial cuts to get ourselves back in line.
Okay, yeah, and that's something that we're gonna be battling with next year, and something that none of us want to do. But that's the question that I'm gonna get constantly as well. You just got money from the state. You just increased a referendum. So why are you cutting budget? So I think your explanation kind of explains it. So thank you.
I have kind of a general question too. Going through all of the funds and all of those fund balances, it comes out to about $46 million in total fund balances. Each one of them has to have a balance, a fund balance, to stay, stay afloat. So, as we go through, food service, debt service, medical, OPB, and all of those types of, all those funds have to have a fund balance, or people might say surplus, but that is essential for us to maintain it. When we talk about the general fund, we're dropped down to 5%, that's only 7 million. But when we've gotten into those discussions before, what do we cut, where do we cut, how do we cut? You can't, cut the programs, the band uniforms, all of those types of things, to save money, but all of those balances that we have to have for each of those funds.
One of the things to remember, though, when you're looking at those different things is that, yes, we have that much in funds, but one of the funds that you're talking, that was about $25 million, is our old facility that's going to be spent down right through, and that's why we got the bonds and we spent it down. So it's you have to look at that. Majority of fund balance is for cash flow. It's to make sure that we have cash flow, and it's make sure that if there's something that happens in the district, that we don't have to we have time to be able to make adjustments, just like similar to where we're at today, that we'll be able to have a year conversation with the board, and the board having the ability to make the decision on what they want to do to be able to get ourselves back in line. The other items, like the other one with a larger fund balance, would be the medical, and that's all dedicated to medical. And it's to prepare ourselves so that we don't have an issue with, that we have to, as some districts had to do, is give their employees 30+% increases. So, I think both, if you take those two pieces out of the fund balances, the dollar amount of the fund balance that we have at the end isn't that large.
Well, and the same thing with OPEB. We have to have that fund balance in there to cover vacation, severances, and everything else. Should we be hit with them all at once, then that would wipe that out. But I'm saying that from for the 2019 to 2020 is the number that we're looking at for some of those. And that's just, that's just very necessary to cover whatever might happen. But it's still a big amount that's needed.
Anybody else? Thanks, Fred.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'm moving on to board member reports.
Yes.
Since we have a closed session after this, and our custodian staff is on summer hours, I was hoping that board members would save their reports for next time, unless they have something pressing, so we can respect our custodial staff's hours as close as we can.
I'll second that.
Okay. We'll move to the superintendent's report.
I do have one thing that needs to be addressed. We would like the board to address. Every January, the board holds an organizational meeting to plan the calendar year for the school board. And one of the planning actions the board takes is scheduling of board sessions for the calendar year. And what they do is they say that we're gonna have board sessions on the second and fourth Mondays of each month. So, administration requesting 3 changes to the remaining months of this year. The first is to cancel the July 8th and 22nd board meetings. We do that normally every year for July. The second would be to cancel the to move the November 11th school board meeting to November 12th because of Veterans Day is on November 11th. The third would be to cancel the December 23rd board meeting because it's during winter break.
So we need a motion to change cancel the board meetings for July, move the November 11th school board meeting to November 12th, and cancel the December 23rd board meeting due to winter break.
Right.
So moved.
So, second?
Thank you. All in favor of those changes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? None.
Great, thank you.
All right. Is there any other business to come before the board tonight? Seeing none, we shall adjourn to our closed session. Thank you.
All done.